Johnny Tremain, A Story of Boston in Revolt by Esther Forbes. This is part 5 and the last part of chapter 2. At first, Mrs. Lapham tended to humor the poor boy, as he preferred the birth and death room to the attic with Dove and Dusty. She had let him stay on. He had never in his life slept in a bed alone, much less a whole room. He wanted to be alone. There was one trouble with his new quarters. Mrs. Lapham. When Mrs. Lapham came down to start breakfast, she always began by getting him up. "Get into your clothes, you lazy boy. Stop at Deacon Parsons for a quart of milk. Get to the town pump." Soon enough, she was addressing him as a lazy good-for-nothing, a lug of bed, a worthless limb of Satan. Such words poured out of her absent-mindedly, but never in the old days had she called Johnny such names. So they poured out now, but not then. The boy least necessary in the shop had always done chores. Now both Dove and Dusty were more valuable than Johnny Tremain. Every morning he put on the heavy wooden yoke, trudged over to North Square for drinking water. Now, for the first time, he leaned to handle a broom properly. He carried a charcoal for an annealing furnace in the shop, and wood for the cooking hearth in the kitchen. And as he moved restlessly about doing, and often failing to do, his humble work, Scylla and Isana watched him and said very little. Never, not even a single word, not even a single insult. He had made it clear to them he wanted to be left alone. Madge and Dorcas found innumerable small tasks for him. Now he wasn't doing anything. Once fat Madge made him sit before her, holding a skein of yarn from which she wound a ball. He was miserable with his crippling hand stretched out for all the world to see. When she motioned it, he threw the yarn at her head and walked off. One day Mr. Lapham called to him and led him to a bench under the old willow behind the coal house. The old man had never once berated him for Sabbath breaking, never reminded him how often he had pointed out that pride goes before a fall. "My boy," he said mildly, "soon it will be September. Summer is over." Summer is over. Johnny nodded. "And I feel I must talk with you. When I signed for you, Johnny, there was a mutual contract between your mother and myself. She's dead, so the contract is now between you and me. I promised to feed and clothe you, keep you in good discipline, and as far as your capacity permitted, to teach you the silversmith's arts and mysteries. I never had a boy so quick to teach, and you promised to serve me diligently for 7 years, to keep my secrets and my honor. You've done all that, Johnny, but now I can't keep my contract with you. I can't teach a cripple-handed boy to be a silversmith." Johnny said nothing. "Mrs. L. is right," the old man went on. "You mean she wants to get rid of me?" "Not exactly, but she does think it is an extravagance for a poor household to keep a boy just for chores. But I've told her." There was an unexpected glint of determination in the groping old eyes. "I've told her as long as you wish you are to stay with us, I won't ever turn you out. I mind the time your mother came to my shop with you, and she was a sweet lady, very genteel. She said your heart was fastened on being a silversmith. She said you was a bright boy. You always was that. Now, Johnny, it's for your own good I'm talking to you. You've got to learn another way to support yourself. I want you to go around, look about the shops, and find out a responsible trade where a bad hand won't matter too much. If you're a bright boy, Johnny, maybe a rope maker or a cooper or a weaver could teach you his craft. That hand of yours will soon be strong enough, but will always be sort of doubled in on itself." Johnny started to look at his hand and quickly thrust it back into his pocket. "You're right," he said. "I've got to go." "I don't want you to feel hurried about leaving us, Johnny. You're just about earning your keep by the odd jobs you do, in spite of what Miss L says. You look about you quietly. You look about you quietly and find a trade to your fancy and a master you think you'd like. You can tell him from me. I'll give the rest of your time away for nothing. It was less than 2 months ago, Mr. Revere promising something extra for his time. Oh my goodness. Excuse me. Mrs. L doesn't like the way you lord her off and go swimming, but you lord her and swim all you have a mind, just so you get the chores done and settle down real hard to finding something new, finding yourself a new trade. And one more thing I have on my mind. Yes, sir. I want you to forgive Dove like a Christian. Forgive him. Why? Why? That's when you ask for a crucible. Why? That when you asked for a crucible, he handed you the old cracked one. You mean he did it on purpose? No, Johnny. He only meant to humiliate you. He tells me Mrs. L made me question him. That he was that offended. He was that offended by your Sabbath breaking. He thought it fitting that you should learn a lesson. I can't help but admit I'm encouraged with that much piety in one of my boys. Johnny's voice sounded strangled. Mr. Latham, I'm going to get him for that. Hush, hush, boy, I say. The Bible says forgive. He was real repentant when he told me. Never meant to harm you. He was in tears. Oh, gosh. Hang on one second. He's going to be in a lot more of those tears for I'm done with him. That scabby white louse with hypocritical. Hold your tongue, boy. I thought misfortune had taught you patience. It has, says Johnny. If I have to, I'll wait 10 years to get that dove. But he quieted himself instantly and thanked his master for his kindness. As he walked past the shop, he saw Dove and Dusty hanging idly out of the shop window. They were looking for him. Dove said, "Will Mr. Johnny Tremain be so kind as to fetch us some drinking water? Miss Latham says we are too valuable to leave our benches. She told us we were to send for you." Without a word, he went to the back entry, put on the heavy yoke. Understandably, the sight of Johnny yielding a broom, carrying charcoal, firewood, water, had not quickly lost its fascination for his erstwhile slaves. They were still hanging out. Understandably, the sight of Johnny wielding a broom, carrying charcoal, firewood, water, had not quickly lost its fascination for his erstwhile slaves. They were still hanging out of the window. "Look sharp, Johnny. Hey, boy, look sharp." Giggles, a low whistle. Johnny said nothing. The end of chapter 2. Oh, my God.